You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, Patreon. How are you? I hope you are well, and I thank you for your support. Longstreet, James Longstreet at Gettysburg. What did he do while he was here? Oh, what a controversial figure he is. Lots of people like to place the blame on Longstreet for the Confederate loss. But it's like an onion. The whole controversy is like an onion with so many layers of time and just such nonsense that we need a person like Cory Pfarr to help us kind of separate the nonsense from the reality and the BS from the regular S. So who is Cory Pfarr? Cory Pfarr is the author of Longstreet at Gettysburg, A Critical Reassessment, which I just started reading. I got my copy in the mail the other day. I started reading it, and it is so far so good. I love it. I think you're going to like it too, because he re-examines the whole controversy over Longstreet and his performance here at Gettysburg. But anyway, he works for the Department of Defense. That's Cory, not Longstreet. And he's an American history author whose main interests span America's Revolutionary to Civil War years. Me too. He's the author of John Quincy Adams's Republicanism, 1,000 Obstacles Apparently Stand Before Us, and Longstreet at Gettysburg, A Critical Reassessment from 2019. So the John Quincy Adams book, by the way, that was from 2014, and Longstreet is from 2019, just came out. He's also written 2 articles for North and South Magazine and Gettysburg Magazine. He has appeared on the Pennsylvania Cable Network and C-SPAN American History TV. He lives in Pikesville, Maryland with his wife and 3 kids, and can you believe it? The man is only 30 years old. He has accomplished so much and much more to come. I love talking to Cory. He was a really cool guy. He actually, his family was in the room with us. So we have his daughter, Abigail, in here. And every once in a while, she tried to steal the show. But in spite of that, we were able to talk about, history stuff. And I hope you will enjoy this. And remember, I'm learning. You're learning, so let's learn together with Cory M Pfarr. All right, are we ready?
Yeah,
let's
ready.
Try it here.
Whenever you are.
A towel.
It's a blanket. Blanket. Okay, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. We have Cory Pfarr with us. Cory Pfarr wrote a book called Longstreet at Gettysburg, A Critical Reassessment. And Cory Pfarr is joined by Abigail, who is pointing at a blanket, calling it a towel. Hello, Cory. How are you?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm glad you did this.
Yep.
So your book, Longstreet at Gettysburg, A Critical Reassessment. First of all, let's talk about you for a minute. What got you into the Civil War or Longstreet, or what made you decide to write this book?
So it goes a pretty long ways back for me at this point, even to age 4 or 5, when I started taking trips to Gettysburg Battlefield and Antietam Battlefield and other battlefields down in Virginia. Mm-hmm. Several very memorable battlefield visits when I was young. Also the Gettysburg movie, I would say, came out in the early 90s, 93.
For all of us, yeah.
Yep. So, 90, 94, 95, and throughout the 90s, watching that pretty consistently, pretty constantly.
Yeah.
So I got inspiration from that. And then as it relates to General Longstreet, obviously, the movie kind of precipitated my looking into the wealth of scholarship on the Battle of Gettysburg. So I was reading a lot of the secondary sources throughout the 90s, and I kept seeing the same kind of point of view, the same kind of interpretation when it comes to Longstreet's performance at Gettysburg, and it was usually a quite negative interpretation of his role there.
Laying the blame on him for everything?
Essentially, yes. Okay. Even children's books and young adult books. Yeah, I was very much into, I remember getting at, I guess it was at the Visitor Center, one of the early visits to the Gettysburg battlefield, I got Long Road to Gettysburg.
Right.
And just recently I looked back at what was said about Longstreet and in the book, which was published, I think, in the early 90s. And it was, all the usual. Longstreet dragged his feet. Longstreet was insubordinate. Longstreet was late. Longstreet was pouting. This and that. But coupled with that, throughout the 1990s, I also started getting into actually just reading the primary source record as well at a young age.
Really? So as a young man, you're like, oh, let me see what they were
exactly
saying.
Yeah, the after battle reports, the memoirs. I read as many of the after battle reports as I could, even at a young age, and even getting into not only Longstreet's memoirs from Manassas Step-O-Matics, but a lot of E.P. Alexander's writings. So his Fighting for the Confederacy came out there in the late 90s. I think the edited version by Gary Gallagher came out around that time, and also his other later memoirs, Military Memoirs of a Confederate, so and others. So and I was kind of trying to compare what I was seeing in the secondary sources with the primary sources, and I was seeing a significant gap. I wasn't really seeing the same thing that historians, I guess, were seeing and writing about in their secondary accounts of the battle, and perhaps were leaving out some of the primary source record from their narratives of the battle. At the time, I was kind of trying to figure out why that was the case. Why were they leaving out certain things that E.P. Alexander was writing that discounted their interpretation? Why were they leaving out pretty much all of Lafayette and McClall's post-war writings in many cases?
And so why were they doing it?
I think there's really a leftover residue of what came out of the post-war years in several ex-Confederate officers' attacks on Longstreet in the post-war years after Lee's death. Now, it's significant that they started this after Lee's death. And even Longstreet made this case in all of his writings, and not only his memoirs, but his battles and leaders accounts, his Annals of the War that you can find in the Annals of the War book, that he believed that if Lee was alive when these ex-Confederate officers were making allegations against Longstreet's performance at Gettysburg, and negative allegations, that if Lee was around, Lee would have come to his defense. So I think that historians, unfortunately, I think in many cases, have sort of fallen into the trap of trusting a lot of the most agenda-driven, biased writings of the post-war years, and they've fashioned their narratives using that post-war primary source record. And I think that several of these historians hail from Virginia. And as I'm sure you're aware, Lee and Stonewall Jackson, to a certain extent, were kind of fashioned into marble men, so to speak, in the post-war years. Right. And Longstreet was not a Virginian. Right. Also, Longstreet became a post-war Republican. Longstreet also urged reconciliation in the post-war years. Longstreet also supported, at least to a limited extent, black suffrage in the South in the post-war years. None of these gentlemen liked any of these things. Longstreet also contributed to William Swinton's 1866 book, Campaigns of the Army of the Potomac. in which he was interviewed. Longstreet was interviewed for this book, and he sort of expressed some of his some things that he suggested to Robert E. Lee at the Battle of Gettysburg, sort of questioning Lee's judgment in certain aspects of the battle. So that was published in the late 1860s. So when Lee passed away, William Pendleton and Jubal Early thought it was time to find a scapegoat for the Battle of Gettysburg. You have this post-war Republican. You have someone who questioned Lee's judgment publicly, just after the war ended in 1866, 1867. Who better than James Longstreet to hoist the blame of the Battle of Gettysburg on? And you had 30 years of, initially it was the bogus Sunrise attack. That was their first salvo.
Right.
And when that was totally debunked, they went on to, Longstreet dragged his feet on the evening of the first day, throughout the second day, and even on the morning of the third day. So they kind of toned it back a bit, but they kept the attacks up until even after Longstreet's death. John B. Gordon was writing about it after Longstreet's death in 1904.
We love to have someone to blame.
Yep.
Like, we can't accept that Lee lost or that Meade won.
Exactly.
It has to be something went wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And we're that way with everything. You look at, yesterday was the anniversary of JFK's death.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to get into JFK, but like to me, I went from conspiracy theorist on that to, let me look at all the evidence. And I'm like, you know what? No, I think Oswald did do it. I think he was zeroing in, and that's how he got lucky on the third shot.
Right.
All those those shots beforehand were misses. He was aiming for the head the whole time. Yeah. That's what I think now, right? But we can't let the conspiracy theories go, because how could this little weasel take out the most powerful man in the world? We can't believe that.
Right.
How can the great General Lee lose?
Yes.
And so we have to blame somebody. Well, let's blame Longstreet because he's a Republican now, and he thinks we should reconcile with our former enemies. And it makes sense.
Yeah, and even more importantly, how could Robert E. Lee lose at what these ex-Confederates considered to be the most important battle of the war,
right?
The high tide for the Confederacy. Yeah. So
it's got to be sabotage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then, what made you decide that you wanted to write a book kind of exonerating him from all of these accusations?
It was a long time coming. So kind of what I described before, with delving into the secondary sources and the primary sources, I was seeing a large disconnect. And coupled with that, it was kind of surprising to me, but no one ever wrote a book on Longstreet at Gettysburg. I mean, specifically. A full-length book. Now, there have been other books, Glenn Tucker's 1968 Lee and Longstreet at Gettysburg, covered a lot of this territory, but I don't think as comprehensively as sort of I tried to in my book, and other evidence has kind of come to light since then. So in the primary source record. So I felt the need that to write the book. I felt there was a significant gap there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have written the book if I thought it was the same old, and what authors in the past had said. So I felt it was time to cover the topic in full.
And I mean, you're a young guy. How old are you?
I'm 30.
You're 30.
I'm 30 years old.
And so now you've been today and last weekend, you were at the Visitor Center signing copies of the book. Yep. How did you become such an overnight success at such a young age?
I have to give the credit to the topic, really. I think that this topic, and especially a more favorable view of Longstreet's performance at Gettysburg, I think people have been craving it.
Yeah.
For decades now.
And I really
do.
Yeah, there seems to be a groundswell of people saying, "Hey, now wait a minute, Longstreet wasn't so bad.
Yeah,
you guys are giving him a bad rap, and yeah."
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to make it seem, and I've said this before. Longstreet was not perfect either. Sure. So I'm not here to say that either. But I'm also here to say that Robert E. Lee was not perfect.
What?
Careful. Yeah.
Careful. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Robert E. Lee was no general is perfect.
No human being is.
Longstreet made mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm not that guy either. So.
Hello, Getty's nerds. It's Matt, and I hope you enjoyed that preview of our premium content that can now be found over at patreon.com. I just want to let you know that Addressing Gettysburg will always have free content for you to listen to in the forms of our narrative episodes like Antietam to Chancellorsville and the upcoming episode entitled Invasion, June 1863, appendix episodes, and our wildly popular Ask a Gettysburg Guide episodes. But episodes like Antietam to Chancellorsville take months to produce, as things are now. I hear from people almost every day asking how long until the next episode is finished. And the answer is, when I have the time, I can do it. Your support at Patreon can cut down the time it takes to produce an episode by months. Maybe you don't care about that. Maybe the Ask a Gettysburg Guide episodes are what you like, but they leave you wanting to learn more. Well, fear not. More is what Patreon is all about. Patrons receive access to new premium episodes each week. These episodes are straight interviews or discussions with licensed battlefield guides, rangers, local historians, academics, authors, public historians, people from the Gettysburg community who do impressive things, and frankly, just about anyone who can talk on a subject related to Gettysburg. I want to make sure that the interest you already have in Gettysburg is enriched with our premium content. Your support means the world to me, because that means it will be easier to produce content that will bring Gettysburg to more people and, hopefully, more people to Gettysburg. And the podcast episodes are just the beginning. So please go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. That's patreon.com/addressinggettysburg and become a patron. I thank you in advance.